Mihawk is one of the most popular, hyped up, and seldom seen characters in the entire series, and the most that we know to expect of him in the actual narrative is that his endpoint is being defeated by Zoro. However, that means that there is one major thing that I feel would be almost necessary to see out of him beforehand, which is some actual impressive combat situation for Mihawk before he fights Zoro. Because I think it would be a damn shame if Mihawk, one of the coolest characters in One Piece by far, one of the most unique character concepts to exist in the One Piece world period, were to end the series with only one notable battle to his name, a loss to his apprentice. So today I'm going to be breaking down why that is, and why, as interesting and captivating as Mihawk is, it would be a disservice to the greatness of his character to hype him up for 1,000 chapters to essentially lose a duel. So before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece videos every week. Now, Mihawk was a brilliantly introduced character when he was first dropped into the story. The first truly quote-unquote hype top tier that we got to see in action, as back then we had no proper context to realize that hey, Shanks was also actually a big deal. Mihawk was the one who essentially showed us that there is a far bigger world out there, and what we see now in East Blue is the equivalent of a small frog living in the bottom of a well. Mihawk essentially was the one that opened up the potential of the world of One Piece. And what stood out about Mihawk from day one and has continued to stand out about him is the unique nature of his existence. In a world where pirates are struggling to survive across all corners of the ocean, from the Grand Line to the New World, in a world where everybody is at the mercy of the elements, the marines, stronger pirates, in a world where everyone is desperately clawing to climb their way up the ladder, where at the tippy top level you need to have a massive crew, a full-fledged armada with commanders and officers, where you need to have many islands and territories under your control. Amidst all of that, there is one man that is sitting in his own separate little category, the exception to all of these rules. Sitting by himself, you've got Mihawk. What makes Mihawk so cool is that he's the special case, an anomaly. This is one dude who is basically so strong and so unbothered by outside events that he is, for all intents and purposes, above all of that nonsense that other pirates obsess over. Note, I'm not saying Mihawk is stronger than all the emperors or anything like that, just that he is strong enough individually that it was never a hassle for him to be living life without any of the shit everyone else treats as a necessity. And he's been perfectly fine living that way for decades. Now, you could attribute a lot of that to him being a Shichibukai, and so he's been safe from the Marines. But as we recently learned, it sounds more like he was made a Shichibukai to keep the Marines safe from him, as he was known as the Marine Hunter. The Marines were Mihawk's original prey, and their laughable attempts to hunt him down now are nothing more than a nuisance to him. In fact, the fun of Mihawk is that the further we've gone in the story, the more impressive his existence has become. Obviously, from the start, Mihawk was impressive, sailing around in this little raft through the supposedly nightmarish Grand Line, perfectly contrasting with Don Krieg, who had all of these advanced weapons, an armory, and a gigantic 50-ship fleet, and Mihawk casually proved that none of that really mattered, as at the end of the day, his individual strength trumps all of that excess baggage. This contrast alone at Mihawk's introduction perfectly reflects what Mihawk represents in the story at large. A pirate who is exempt from the normal pirate way of life, who doesn't need any of the things that other pirates rely on to survive, because Mihawk's individual strength is just so ludicrously strong that he's able to live in his own special little bubble without any of that other stuff. But what's really made Mihawk's lone wolf life even crazier is the further we've gone in the story, because the less sense it's made. Since the further we've gone, we've been hit with more and more rules and structure to the pirate world. The New World is ruled by these emperors. The emperors all command gigantic territories. Supposedly, you need to submit to one of the emperors or go to war against them just to survive in the New World. And yet, Mihawk seems just fine doing whatever he wants, wherever he wants. Little did we know, but way back in the first saga, we actually saw Mihawk showing up in the New World just to pay a visit. Essentially, the fact that no other pirates seemed to mess with Mihawk, and Mihawk actually used to abuse the Marines so badly that they made him a Shichibukai, gives Mihawk's strength even more and more weight as we gain more and more context as to how absurd it is to be able to live as carefree as he has all by himself for so many years. Basically, the more we learn about the world, the more impressive Mihawk is, because the biggest testament to his strength is that in a world where structures and hierarchies and rules matter so much, Mihawk has his own place where these things simply don't seem to apply to him. So all of that being said, is Mihawk a really entertaining and exciting character concept in the One Piece world? Of course. He's been being hyped since the beginning of the story. However, I think we're now at a point where just hyping him up no longer feels enough, especially if a defeat to Zoro is around the corner for him. We've gotten all the cool scenes of Mihawk being talked up. Of course, the initial Dawn Krieg scene where Mihawk was established as the first true top tier that we were getting to witness. Then the Shichibukai meeting where even among all of the powerful figures assembled there, Mihawk was treated as the most surprising and noteworthy appearance, as though he would normally be above matters such as this. And later on, we learned that his duels with one of the Yonko, Shanks, were so great that even the world's strongest man, Whitebeard, remembers them. And even now in Wano, we're learning that Mihawk has a black blade, which only the absolute most legendary of legendary swordsmen have. And in case it needed confirmation, Mihawk is confirmed to be stronger than Shanks in straight up sword combat. And maybe most impressive of all, he has a bounty of 3.59 billion berry on the merit purely of his individual strength. He has absolutely no crew, no territory, but the Marines are just that terrified of the individual strength of a man known as the Marine Hunter, that he has a bounty even greater than all these other emperors, which is an absolute anomaly amongst everything we have seen of the bounty system. And even that little bit of information that he was the Marine Hunter sets him in a class of its own as a pirate, as there is to date not a single pirate that we have ever heard of who has gone out of their way to hunt down Marines. That is essentially as bold-faced an attack on authority as openly fighting against the world government. Yet despite all of this hype, it's still just stuff we're being told. Would you feel satisfied if after all of these hints and teasing about Mihawk's true strength, we don't actually get to see it outside of a duel where he loses to Zoro? Even just this last chapter, the off-screened amazing feats that he supposedly performed, would you feel satisfied if we never see that full strength in action until it's being trumped by Zoro? At the end of the day, would that make Mihawk's time in One Piece ultimately boil down to some flashy entrances, an intimidating aura that all amounted to one notable fight and defeat? It doesn't help that his few instances of swinging a sword with any bare minimum degree of seriousness were more so used to hype up the Whitebeard pirates like Jozu and Vista. Even when the Marines came to hunt him down after he lost Shichibukai status, Mihawk was not actually shown fighting. Would we really get to the end of One Piece and the first time we see him truly getting serious is against Zoro, and it's him losing? I personally think that that may retroactively really sour a lot of the initial excitement surrounding Mihawk. And this isn't just me wanting some meathead action from a strong character, as I believe that Mihawk's first fight being a loss to Zoro would be a disservice to Zoro as well, and a disservice to his dream and how it's been treated in the story. What Zoro has been working towards all this time is at stake here too. Because if at the end of the day, we have Zoro getting his win against the world's strongest swordsman, I feel like it wouldn't quite carry as much weight if we never truly got to see what the level of the world's strongest swordsman really looked like. We would obviously know that Zoro has achieved something great because we have been told that Mihawk is great, but not because we ever got to actually see how high the mountain is that Zoro had to scale. It would be similar to Luffy defeating Kaido if all we ever heard about was how strong Kaido was, but then we never got to see Kaido show his strength against all these other characters first before being defeated by Luffy. If Zoro defeats Mihawk as it is right now, we would understand that yes, Zoro is now stronger than Mihawk, and we would know that Mihawk is very strong, but we would never have gotten a great gauge of what that means. I personally would find that a little disappointing. Now note, I'm not saying that Oda needs to dedicate a full chapter to Mihawk versus Fujitora or something like that. I am almost certain something like that will never happen. There's just not the panel space for it. However, if we were to compare to how Oda has treated Shanks throughout the series, considering that Shanks is to Luffy what Mihawk is to Zoro, Shanks has also had very little combat. Most of Shanks' hype has also come through implied strength more than anything else. However, Oda has allowed Shanks to flex. That is a big difference. Shanks has essentially flexed his strength 3 times throughout the story. The first time, he clashed with the world's strongest man and split the sky. The second time, he stopped the now Fleet Admiral of the Marines and ended the biggest war in the history of pirates. And the third time, he sent a Marine Admiral running away with his tail between his legs purely through the greatest display of Conqueror's Haki that we have ever seen. At this point, whether or not Oda gives Shanks a real, genuine fight before he loses to Blackbeard or whatever ultimately happens to him, you can't deny that Shanks has gotten to at least show off his strength multiple times in brief instances throughout the story in the face of extremely strong characters, and each time has been made to look really good while doing it, to the point that many fans currently feel that Shanks is the strongest character in the series after having barely swung his sword twice. Is it unreasonable to hope that Mihawk gets to at least give us one glimpse of his strength against someone that is also strong at some point? Could we maybe get to see Mihawk flex what he can do against an admiral briefly? I think that would be all that is needed to finally visually establish for the reader to show us just how strong Mihawk is and make his inevitable matchup with Zoro that much more enticing and meaningful. Now, the best part about all this is that with Cross Guild's current initiative, I think we may finally have the setup for Mihawk to get a notable showing against the Marines. Cross Guild's current directive is to hunt Marines. That is what the Marines are stressing about right now, Cross Guild's new Marine hunting movement. And this may just be the start, as the mastermind of Cross Guild, Crocodile, is extremely anti-Marines and anti-world government. We know Crocodile was trying to awaken Pluton with full intent to go against the world government. We know Crocodile set aside his dispute with Whitebeard and Luffy and actually allied with them against the Marines because he just hates the Marines and the world government that much more. And we know that Crocodile was interested in Mihawk's reputation as a Marine hunter when he recruited him. In fact, above any of the other emperors right now, it seems like Cross Guild is the one that is most directly antagonizing the Marines and openly instigating battle with them at the moment. And last we saw of Akainu, he was talking about taking the initiative to strike back in the face of all the pirate and revolutionary related chaos going on in the world right now. So I think we're set up pretty well for a potential confrontation at some point between Cross Guild and the Marines, even if it is only a brief section of some chapter. And at the moment, Mihawk is undoubtedly the strongest member of Cross Guild, who would be relied upon should an admiral come knocking. If Crocodile is the brains and Buggy is the face, then Mihawk is the muscle, and all of this provocation by Cross Guild should lead to some interesting encounter for Mihawk in the future, and hopefully, finally, a worthy showing for the world's strongest swordsman and Zoro's final goal. So if you agree or disagree that Mihawk needs some impressive showing before fighting Zoro, then let me know in the comments below, especially if you've got an interesting matchup in mind. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And you can support me on Patreon to get my extended thoughts on this and all future topics.